Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Hyrick, your VoIP expert here at VoIP Supply, and welcome to another episode of SIP Chats. Today, we are welcoming back my colleague and dear friend from Algo, Scott Farrell. How's it going, Scott?
It's going very well, Brian. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I look forward to chatting with you today. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Scott, welcome again. I know this is your second time on the show. Would you like to reintroduce yourself and tell us a bit at a high level about Algo Solutions for those who were not able to tune into the last episode?
Yeah, sure, Brian. So my name is Scott Farrell. I've been with Algo for just over 4 years. And in my role, I'm a strategic accounts representative. So I work very closely with our distribution partners, integration partners, and clients. So basically, I have a North American-based role. And yeah, I interact with a lot of different folks and do events such as this just to make sure that people are aware, of the product set and the company. So Algo, for those of you who are not familiar with the company, we're a North American-based manufacturer, and we've been in business for over 50 years. And we've basically evolved to a company that build IP-based devices for public address visual notification, and we build a series of door intercoms. So our solution set is completely IP-based, and it ties in, very nicely into, UC, Unified Communication Solutions, SIP-based solutions, very easy to deploy and manage this infrastructure, and we're seeing very wide adoption across all verticals with our product set.
Sweet. Thank you for the introduction, Scott. So the past year, everyone's been working remotely, and we're now seeing a big push of return to the office. Has Algo been seeing any particular products that is getting additional attention to because of the return to office?
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? So as I said, I have a North American-based role, and I have not traveled in almost 2 years now. I look to start my travel schedule again, hopefully in early 2022. So I will have been home for 2 years. A lot of organizations really had to scramble, when COVID hit, and we've got a number of people, that got introduced to, hosted platforms, these new unified collaboration suites that are offered because people had to be able to work remotely. So a lot of organizations, that had premise-based equipment, legacy equipment, a lot of them got caught, flat-footed. So they
Sure.
had to quickly, roll these solutions out. So there's been exponential growth, of course, in the Zoom world and with all of your hosted players like, Ring Central 8x8. There's a host of them. So basically, you now have introduced all these feature sets to people where they can work from anywhere with soft clients and IP devices, and they don't necessarily want to give those up. So as they're coming back to the office, a lot of these organizations are going to, retire a lot of that legacy infrastructure and stick with where they were forced to go with these SIP-based unified communication solutions. So as they're doing that, they're having to look at their infrastructure that's in place today. So if they had paging that was tied into a legacy paging system, was tied into a legacy phone system, and now they have to tie that into their new UC-based SIP solution, Algo fits in very nicely there. We build paging adapters, that are SIP compliant. Like all of our endpoints are third-party SIP endpoints. We support multicast with these devices, so we tie in very nicely into these hosted environments. We're certified on over 60 different platforms, whether they're IP-based, prem or in the cloud. So what we can do then, as these clients are deciding to move forward with a SIP-based solution, is their legacy paging system that was in place and tied to their digital phone system that they're about to retire. We can tie that into their new UC infrastructure with one of our Algo paging adapters, for instance. And then, for customers that want to, augment their environment, so they had a legacy paging system and they've tied that now into their UC infrastructure. The simplicity of IP that we bring to the table, and that our devices just connect to their network. Now they can improve, that communications platform, because now they can just drop in additional IP speakers and expand coverage and so on and so forth. And again, if they ever do get forced out of the office again, now they've deployed an infrastructure that is network-based and they can manage it from anywhere, which is a huge, huge benefit, right? You don't have to be physically there to manage this infrastructure.
Sure, absolutely. And we're seeing, influx of calls as well of people tying into Microsoft Teams.
Mhm.
Is there a way to tie in paging to Microsoft Teams? If so, does Algo have a solution for that?
Yeah, Teams is special, right? So I
Right.
mean, Teams does not support native third-party integration of SIP. So, we do get a tremendous number of calls about MS Teams, and it is being very widely adopted as a platform out there. So there's multiple ways to integrate. So for one, Teams, Microsoft is going to be introducing a gateway, and that'll be coming out, soon. I mean, I would be surprised if it's not out by end of this year or early first quarter 2022. And that gateway is going to be able to receive a third-party SIP registration. So we're involved with that, from a testing perspective. So we're pretty excited about that. We also build devices that can tie into a customer's infrastructure. So and provide visual and ringing notifications. So an example would be you have Poly or Yealink phones that are deployed in a Teams environment. We build the Algo 2507 ring adapter, which can tie into the headset port of a phone. And then basically you can tie one of our devices to that 2507 device. So if you had a phone that was in a warehouse space and you wanted to be able to just have loud ringing there, we would be able to deploy a 2507 directly into the phone's headset, provide a connection to our our device, so that when that phone rings, we would then be able to do an audible loud ring or a visual ring with one of our visual notification devices, one of our strobe lights. The other way, as well, is the fact that these phones, for instance, Yealink, can be put into a hybrid mode, right? So when in hybrid mode, your Yealink phone can be in SIP mode or it can be in Teams mode. And with the SIP mode firmware and this dual mode firmware, you're able to build out an RTP multicast solution. So you're actually able to page from a Microsoft Teams phone utilizing the customer's network. So there's no SIP registration required whatsoever there. We're just doing an RTP broadcast. So the phones are actually sending out an RTP stream onto the network, and then our speakers will respond to that. So you can build out a paging infrastructure with no SIP registration whatsoever. You're able to do that with the Poly sets as well. So any phone that can do RTP multicast that's supported on Teams will typically allow you to do that. So Poly, of course, with their new the new CCX phones, they didn't have the Poly feature available initially, but they are actually going to be releasing that feature set in the CCX phones as well. So you'll be able to build out paging infrastructure with no SIP registration on the Poly CCX versions as well. It is embedded, of course, in the VVX phones that they have today.
Right. Scott, as people are building out and looking for more infrastructure, what is Algo doing, if anything, to help cut with those costs? I know it can be very expensive, if you're looking to install, let's say, 100 of Algo IP speakers. Do you have any products coming out to help with the cost?
Yeah, certainly we do. So, I mean, again, if the customer has any legacy infrastructure, we can tie an adapter into that, preserve it, and then we can augment it. So you'll see a lot of individuals in the education space, K-12, they'll preserve their speakers to reduce cost in the hallways using our paging adapters, and then they'll deploy a more expensive IP speaker into the classroom to facilitate two-way communication, be able to introduce visual notification, emergency notifications. The other thing that we've done is the fact that a lot of customers were buying an 8301 and driving legacy speakers in hallways and common areas. We saw that, hey, you know what? Why don't we do something about that? So we've introduced a new speaker. It's the 8198. So for those of you that are familiar with our portfolio, the 8188 was our in-ceiling speaker. It needed a dedicated home run drop to that speaker, and it was an 8-watt in-ceiling speaker. What we've done is we've designed and built a speaker called the 8198. It looks identical, but it's a PoE plus speaker, so it's a 16-watt speaker. And in standalone, it's 16 watt, but we allow you now, so in those common areas and hallways and cafeterias, you can connect satellite speakers. So the 1198 was introduced. So now you can put in a single PoE plus drop, connect it to the host, 8198, and then you can daisy chain up to 3 satellite speakers using a simple RJ45 connection, Cat 5 or Cat 6, up to 50 feet in length between each hop, right? So your first speaker, then up, and then 50, then 50, then 50. So you literally can, easily, cover a 100-foot hallway now, with the 4 speakers spaced at, 25 feet,
Wow.
with RJ45 patch cables. We also introduced this with so for those of you that are familiar with the 8186 horn speaker, That was our legacy 8-watt horn speaker, extremely popular, in industrial environments, logistics environments, loud environments. What we've done there is we've also introduced the PoE plus capability with that speaker as well. So when you get into your logistics environments where you have large warehouses and you would have been putting speakers back to back, in the past you would have had to run 2 drops. Now you can run a single PoE plus drop to the 8196 horn speaker, and we support up to 3 of the satellite speakers off of the horn called the 1196. So you're back to back now, single drop. You're in a big open manufacturing area. You could cluster 4 speakers on a pillar and then be able to broadcast out on those 4 speakers. In the past with our 86 horn speaker, you would have run 4 individual drops to that pillar. Now single PoE plus drop, and then you can drive up to 4 speakers. So it significantly reduces the cost. I can give you an example, where
Sure.
we're working with an airport in Florida, and they have a very, very large deployment of legacy infrastructure. And we've been working with them for about 3 years now. And we originally went in and we tied in the Algo paging adapters to all of their amplifiers. They had over 150 amplifiers. We normalized their dialing plan for them. And then as they're renovating the airport, they're able to retire some of that legacy infrastructure. And their end game is to actually be all IP. And the reason being is they want to be able to monitor for in-service every one of their endpoints. They have a very high security posture being an airport. So what we did is we started with the 8301s, and then they started putting in our 8188s, and then they were really enjoying that. High quality wideband codec, being able to manage everything over the network. And as they were going forward, we introduced the new 8198 with the satellite speaker, and we talked to them about it. We sent them some samples. What they've decided to do in one of their terminals is they put in the 8198 technology, and they're basically daisy chaining 2 satellite speakers off of that host. So they were able to reduce their cabling significantly, to the point where they were actually able to eliminate an IDF closet out of their design. So significant savings on the infrastructure from a port perspective, just the labor to run all those drops, and just the fact that they were able to reduce their footprint significantly with this technology.
Absolutely. I bet you had to be that IT director's best friend for a while.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy to work with. Super super smart guy, and he's provided a lot of positive feedback, and he's helped us actually look at developing some really interesting feature sets that he needs, and that's something that we're doing for him. So we definitely enjoy working with our clients. We listen to what they tell us, and that's what drives productivity. That's what drives our organization to do things better and differently, is by listening to our clients. So anyone that's listening to this, if there's ever a requirement you have, and we don't necessarily have the specific product or the specific feature in our firmware, please reach out to us. We're willing to listen and talk to you and help you, design, products and firmware that will derive your outcomes that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I can attest to that as well. For any of you who do have a project, please bring it to the table. VoIP Supply will get Algo involved. They really provide solutions, not just products. They really want to help you, and they're really passionate about creating products that actually solve your solutions, and they're always there for support. One of our tightest partners that we have seen in the industry, absolutely Algo Solutions. Um, I do want to thank all of you who have tuned in today to another Sip Chats episode. We greatly appreciate your time. And Scott, I really appreciate your time as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude this Sip Chats?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're growing exponentially in all the verticals, and we've got some really exciting products that are going to be coming out. So I look forward to speaking to you again in the future and being able to give you more details. But I'll give you a little tidbit. We are coming out, with a really interesting speaker LCD combination that will tie in very nicely into to many verticals. So LCD display that the customer can control and add content to, and also have an array speaker tied into that. So very interesting. I'm very excited about this product, and we will be in beta later this year, and we look to be available for product distribution in first quarter, second quarter 2022.
Awesome. We would love to chat more about that. Hopefully, another Sip Chats episode.
Sure.
VoIP Supply as well would like to note, I believe Algo is going to be attending as well. Channel partners coming up
Yep.
November 1st through the 4th in
Right.
Las Vegas, Nevada. So we will be there. And to all of our listeners as well, if you did enjoy this episode of Sip Chats and you'd like to see more, please give us a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button below. That greatly helps out the cause. We would love to provide more of this content for you and keep this rolling. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. We really
Hey, no
appreciate
problem,
it.
Brian.
The audience certainly appreciates your knowledge as well. And to everyone who tuned in today, until next time, and always, cheers.
Cheers.